And we've come to the fall of the Roman Empire. But, I mean, here's the thing, not really. We come to the fall of the western side of the Roman Empire. And that's why I'm wearing my big Italy sweatshirt, because you see, in history, we're going to say that the Roman Empire falls when Rome itself falls. But in honesty, the Roman Empire continues on for quite some time in the East. It's just they don't control Rome. So let's make that clear. There's going to be a lot of problems that arise that cause this fall of Rome. And if you're choosing to listen to me instead of read, or maybe you will read and you will listen to me, you can do both. I am going to be reading from the book a lot, so I'll let you know the page number I'm on. I'll let you know the section I'm on. So if you need to go back into these pages to look for yourself, you can do that. All right, so here we go. I am on page 414, Decline of the Roman Empire. So for centuries, the Roman Empire ruled the Mediterranean region. In the AD 200s, however, Rome begins to decline. So one of the first things that causes Rome to start to decline is the end of that Pax Romana. Okay, so in AD 180, the Emperor Marcus Aurelius died. Now, he was the last of 5 powerful emperors who had kept the empire strong and united for many years. His death marks the end of Pax Romana, which means Roman peace. And over the next 300 years, this empire, the western side, is going to slowly decline and then finally collapse. Now, I don't know why I did this, but this was going to be a more note-taking and me talking lesson. And I took a picture of my board last year on everything that you would have been taking notes on. So you don't have to take notes, but go ahead and refer to this, and you might want to have it up as I'm, again, speaking, so that you can kind of follow along. I put a timeline there, and you'll see that on the left-hand side, you have the peace. You have that Pax Romana. And then at 180 AD, you have Marcus Aurelius dies, and that's the end of Pax Romana, which is why there's a cross through it. Okay? So here's the thing. The peace of the Roman Empire, I'm continuing reading, the peace of the Roman Empire depended on one emperor following another without violence. Now, starting in the late 100s, military commanders began to challenge emperors, hoping to become emperor themselves. So here's a problem, okay? You've got people like Mr. Julius Caesar again, where the commanders are taking their own armies, making them loyal to themselves, and then they're going against the government, and we have civil wars breaking out, okay? And, there's an interesting little story here with Commodus, who was Marcus Aurelius' son. Now, again, Marcus Aurelius was the last great Roman emperor, but he had a son. So why didn't the son continue on with this Pax Romana? Why didn't he become another great emperor? Why? Because he was a spoiled brat. Like, if you read about Commodus, he was the typical, my dad has all the money in the world, my dad takes care of everything, I don't have to do anything, I'll just sit around, spend money, be lazy. And then his father dies, and he has no real training because he didn't really pay attention. He has no real life experience because all he did was, party and all that stuff and live a good life. And yet he becomes emperor. And, I think he realized pretty early on that he was not equipped to be emperor. But he is it anyway. And the story about Commodus is that to win the favor of the Roman people, he becomes a gladiator. I don't know, I think he kind of had like this, I'm going to be like Spartacus, and I'm going to be great, and people are going to love me, and then they'll follow me. But again, he was the worst because he cheated. He would go into the gladiator arena and he would have like all of his weapons really, really sharp and all of his opponents really, really dull so that they had no chance against him. And for a while it was working until they figured out what he was doing and then they just assassinated him. So, it was a problem. But you have the civil wars breaking out again, and civil wars are never good, okay? Now, during this time, you'll see on the right-hand side of my board, it says tried, okay? So there are going to be a few emperors who really do try to bring back the Roman greatness, to bring back the power, to try and stop the decline. And one of those people was Septimus Severus. Harry Potter, Severus Snape. But anyway, Septimus Severus, back in the book, did briefly restore peace after the whole Commodus fiasco. Severus became emperor after winning a civil war, and he was able to hold on to power. He understood that he was emperor because of the army supporting him, not because the people liked him. So basically, he was very blunt in his strategy and said, I'm going to enrich the soldiers because they're going to protect me, which means they'll protect the empire, and I really don't care about other men. That's what scorn all other men means, okay? So he was very military focused, and for a while that worked. But then, problem, he dies. And again, problem, there's no real, as I said before, there was no real setup of progression of who became emperor. It was kind of like a monarchy, but there is a time, okay, from 235 AD to 284 AD, almost 50 years, okay, where it is called the imperial crisis because civil wars were breaking out all over, and commanders or generals were getting into the seat of the emperor to then be basically picked off by the next guy who has a better army, to be picked off by the next guy who has a better army. These aren't invaders. These are Romans against Romans, using Roman soldiers against Roman soldiers. And we're told that this is the worst kind of war, which is one of the big problems you see there, the civil wars. Okay, so yeah, problems abound. Now, civil war brings in economic problems, which is the next section on page 415. So you have massive money problems because civil wars, you need your own people against your own people. You need your own weapons against your own weapons. And the economy is just collapsing because no money is going to the common people. The money is going to the soldiers. It's going to bribe other people to make someone emperor. The money is not going to help the people. It's going to the civil wars. And above that, the emperors start what is called debasing the money. Okay, this is another big problem. Basically, it's fake money. They start taking gold, because at that time they used scales. So, you put gold down, gold weighs a certain amount, you put it next to whatever, and you say, okay, you owe me 2 gold coins for this bread. Well, they start putting in lighter, different metal, covering it in gold. So when you put what you think is your gold coins on the scale, okay, the bread is up here, and the guy's saying, you're not paying me enough. And the poor Roman is saying, it's 2 gold coins. But the scale doesn't lie. And so there's fake money going around that you can't buy what you used to buy, so then they raise the prices, and it was just a fiasco, again, done by the emperors. It's no wonder the Romans fell. All right, so that's another big problem. The economy is hurt. Money isn't the same. The other thing about civil wars that we talk about is that outsiders will kind of hone in when a civil war is going on, especially in the greatest empire, the most powerful empire that had been, the Romans. And so you have all of these outsiders who are saying, ooh, it's time to attack. They're weakened. Their soldiers are fighting each other. Who's watching the borders? No one. They're losing their own soldiers by the double. And so we're going to go and take over. So this was another huge impact of the Civil War, and a huge problem is that it's attracting the foreigners. They're barbarians. On page 415, you see some of those main invaders. You've got the Persians coming back. Now, they're not the Persians of the, Cyrus and all that, Darius, but they're still like from Persia, and they're still like them, and so we know that they were great warriors, and so they come and they take over some of Rome. You've got the Goths. The Goths kind of come from the north, from the German area, very much tribesmen, kind of think of the Vikings, like really burly, like scary kind of men. They're coming in. And then you've got the Huns from China, the ones that the Great Wall of China was built to keep out. You have them coming on over to take over. These are not people you want in your backyard, let alone people you want knowing that you are weak and taking over. All right. So page 416 kind of talks about those different groups when they start filtering in. They still haven't collapsed the empire yet, but they're infiltrating in. They are breaking apart the large Roman Empire. And there's another thing that I've had on here, which I think is really cool. So I hope you are clicking on these things that I put in. I hope so. But it will take you to YouTube, and it's the rise and the fall of the Roman Empire. Okay, so you get to see when it starts very tiny in the middle of the peninsula of Italy, and then as it expands as a republic, you'll see when it turns into an empire, and then you're going to see this next part, which is the second guy we see under the tried column, who is Diocletian. Now, you read about Diocletian before. You might not remember, but you did. So Diocletian's idea was to go back to what Augustus did with Mark Antony. If you remember, when Julius Caesar had his civil wars and called himself dictator for life and ended the republic of the Romans, you had three people ruling. You had, once they got their revenge, but you had Augustus, Octavian, you had Mark Antony, and you had some other guy, which he really didn't last long. But the big split was with the west going to Octavian, where Rome was held, and the eastern portion going to Mark Antony, and that was kind of their peace treaty for his first, leaving to go with Cleopatra. And then we find out that the fake news could be maybe not, that he put in his will that when Mark Antony dies, his Roman land won't go back to Roman people. His Roman land will go back to the Egyptian children of Cleopatra. And so that's when Mark Antony was out of the picture. And then you had one emperor. But Diocletian said maybe that wasn't the worst idea. Because we're so large, why don't split it up? And because now we're being attacked from outsiders, if we split it up, then we have someone watching this side and this side of the empire, and maybe, just maybe, we can regain our land and be powerful again. So Diocletian did that, all right? The other thing Diocletian did, it's not, I'm telling you, it's a horrible thing, but if you can find a common enemy amongst the majority, then all of your problems start to be focused on them, and you can get out your anger on them and not really look at the real problems that are going on in the empire. And this is the other thing Diocletian did. Diocletian decided to say all of these problems They are all because of the Christians. Why? Because the Christians are monotheistic. The Christians will not follow our gods, and the gods are angry. They are bringing this upon us because we have people who are not worshiping them. And so he makes a common enemy out of the Christians. And so, Christians are really, really persecuted at this time. And it's allowed because Diocletian is saying it's their fault. So Diocletian does a great thing in thinking that splitting the empire and then having kind of like junior or co-emperors who, if the emperor dies, there's someone who has been trained to take over. That was great. Blaming everything on the Christians, that's not so nice, Diocletian. Okay, and, again, it works for a while, but then he dies, and then people want to fight for the role again, and even though there was all of that set up, it doesn't last long. Your last person who tries is Constantine. Now, Constantine should be a very familiar name if you have done your Christianity Search and Find. And if you have not, maybe this is another answer for you if you are watching this. Constantine decides to stop the persecution of Christianity and actually makes Christianity legal in the early 300s. Find the date. But he makes it legal. He even converts himself. This kind of keeps the peace amongst a lot of people. And then the other thing he does is he creates a new Rome over in the eastern side of the empire. Now, this new Rome is located in a place called Byzantium, and he names his city after himself, Constantinople. Okay, and he makes it like a new Rome. He has the amphitheater, he has the Circus Maximus, it's called something else you'll learn, but he has the chariot races. He basically makes a new Rome over in the eastern side, and this kind of helps keep the eastern side alive, okay? But despite his hard work, he dies, no one else comes who is any better than him, and now you really have your outsiders, your barbarians coming in. So you've got problems now with the foreign invaders coming in and really taking land. You have Attila the Hun. I think he's in Night at the Museum, the guy who can't really talk and then is with magic. I think that's Attila the Hun, if I'm correct. But he moves in the late 400s. He kind of takes some land. You've got the Germans, the Goths coming back. I'm skipping over to page 419. And I'm just going to read the last section called The Fall of Rome. So it says, in the time, the city of Rome itself was attacked. So all of these outsiders are trying to get to the heart of the empire, which is Rome itself. This is another reason why the Eastern kind of survives, is because no one wants the Eastern side. They want Rome. They want to say they conquered the Italian peninsula. And so the Goths captured Rome for the first time in 410. They looted the city. In 455, you have the Vandals, kind of another like northern barbarian, not nice people coming in, and they plunder Rome. I don't know what the difference between loot and plunder is, but they plunder Rome. Now, Rome never recovers from these attacks. The Western Roman Empire ends in 476. In that year, a German general named Odosier, deposed, or means removed from power, and I get chills every time I say the name, Romulus Augustus. Romulus Augustus was the last Roman emperor. And it is chilling to me because of the name. The first name, Romulus, the first king of Rome. And the last name, Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. And that name was the last. That name was the last Roman to rule Rome. I just think it's, woo. You might not, but I do. Okay? And then all the cities come out under attack. You've got another problem arising where people are moving away. They don't want to be by the violence. There's nothing really left for them in the Roman Empire or the West. And so you have them moving, and they're not loyal, they're not living, they're not being Roman, and they leave. And they leave the Roman Empire, and that's how the West falls. However, there is a glimmer of hope in that the eastern cities continue to prosper. Again, I believe it's because, they didn't really want that yet. They will, because Constantinople is going to become, again, this new Rome, this new great power. And that Eastern Roman Empire survives for almost 1,000 years after the West falls. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a spoiler. It's all due to technology. I mean, they steadfast for quite some time. We're going to talk about the Byzantine Empire next week. Okay? So that's the fall of Rome. If you look at page 418, that might be helpful for, what I have attached for you to complete for this. But it's kind of sad, that Rome is done now. But it was their own fault. They brought on upon themselves with the civil wars. So what I have added for you again was that picture of what the board would have looked like. I've added that what I think is really cool. I like watching it a few times through, how the Romans grow. Again, you'll see the part of the split between the East and the West, and then you'll start to see the invasions and the shrinking and eventually the end of that Western Roman Empire. There's worksheets for you to do that is based on this fall of Rome. And I think that's it. So you can listen to me. You could have read and listened to me. You can listen to the book. One more thing I want to just point out, if you are still listening to me, I don't know. I talk to myself, guys. This is me and my camera phone. But this symbol, when you see this symbol somewhere, it means that you can open things up in maybe a different or larger format for your Christianity search and find. I don't think some of you opened up the rubric nor listened to my video because there are some things missing. And if you see rubric and this sign, it will pop up and explain to you everything I'm looking for to give you that 2.5 points for each of the boxes. Okay? So, Rome has fallen. That's the end of the Roman Empire, kind of. The eastern part is going to stay. They do not own Rome, so historians don't want to call them Roman anymore, and that's where the name the Byzantines is going to come from. Bum, bum, bum. And that's where we'll leave. So, ciao! That means goodbye in Italian. Ciao until probably next week.